Megaphone. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you. It's always a joy, as I always say, and we're going to be getting into a nice meditation this morning. And if you're familiar with this practice of meditating, mindfulness, um, the first step in a real solid mindfulness or meditation practice, it's calming down, it's relaxing the mind. The classic example is allowing the waves of the mind to still. Your mind is much like a fluid substance. And when you're agitated, when you're stressed, when you're anxious, the waves of the mind become very frenetic and chaotic. And when we're in this frenetic, chaotic, or beta wave brain state, we can't reach the inner depths of our own psyche, right? So when we're in a fearful state, a stressed out state, when we're always paying attention to the current affairs and things going on in the outer world, we're in a beta wavelength of the brain. And as a result of being in beta, there's no contact of your inner wisdom, your intuitive guidance, the ability to discern things clearly. You're actually at the mercy of reactive behavior, right? And when you're in a reactive mode of thinking and behaving, you have no power. You lose your personal ability to see the right path, the wise path. Clear choices become very confusing. And that's why mindfulness practice has a very practical aspect to it, because it restores your connection to your own innate wisdom and your internal guidance system, right? Because what you'll find is that mindfulness practice gets you back into a more natural state of awareness. And what's fascinating and utterly amazing about this is your natural state of awareness, as we're told in all these sacred traditions, is the Buddha mind, or it is the Christ mind. It is your divine nature. That's why it's always already the case that you are this divine self. But when we're in a freaked out or passionate or confused or distracted state, lazy, whatever, we are in a state of mind that literally blocks us from knowing ourselves. So mindfulness practice is very important because we get to unlearn who we thought we were within this stressed out reactive mind, right? Because we do form a mental concept of me as the stressed out reactive personality. And that can become a very learned, habitual way of behaving and thinking about yourself. So it becomes like a solid block of ice that you're this stressed out, upset, overly reactive individual, right? Always getting triggered by the things in the world. And when you're in a mindful place, you literally give your ability back to melting that frozen, stuck, overlearned habitual image of yourself. And you come naturally back into settling and attuning to the deeper you, which is connected to the mystery and flow of life, right? The Tao. So that's why when we look at the Eastern teachings, oftentimes they seem counterintuitive to our Western mind. Our Western mind has been trained. Whether we know it or not, we're breathing the air of it philosophically and ideologically. We've been trained to be outward going. We've been trained to be left-brained. And we've been trained to be precise and give these abstract conceptual definitions of things and represent them in terms of our own ideas and make that real. And we've been lost within these definitions and concepts and this outward going attention pattern. And there's a very good book. I haven't read it yet, but I've listened to the author speak about it. Ian McGilchrist is an Oxford-trained psychiatrist, and he wrote this book in '09 called The Master and His Emissary. The Master and His Emissary is Gilchrist's work, or McGilchrist's, his 20-year research into brain activity, brain science. And what he's saying is the way that the left brain works, it's the emissary. It's the manager. It's not the boss. The emissary is the one that is the master. Rather, the emissary is not the master. The master is the left brain. And this is kind of what we were getting at just a moment ago with these Eastern teachings and the way that our Western mind feels them to be counterintuitive. Because in the East, they're training the right brain more than the left brain in terms of these contemplative practices or sciences. And what the right brain is doing is it's opening up to the vastness and the interconnectedness and the intuitive flow of things. The left brain is staying within these static, segmented, fragmented definitions of things. Like you're over there, you're not over here. And because of that, there's these separate, discontinuous aspects of reality. And we become completely fused with that way of perceiving. And it shuts us off or blocks us from the more intuitive, vast, interconnected, web-like nature of our own consciousness. And so we want to explore this morning. We're going to explore it in a way that A Course in Miracles will set it up, because he says our learning patterns need to change. We have overlearned being in the left brain. We've overlearned it. And so our whole ego identity is frenetic, chaotic, stressed, anxious, fearful, and stuck within this limited body identity in this little pigeonhole of perception. And it's overlearned. And what he means by overlearned is it's become so ingrained that we have gotten to a place within ourselves that we don't even question it. We just think it's the norm. This is me, right? And so this unlearning or atonement process that the Course prescribes, we'll see the crossovers within Chan Buddhism or Zen and Taoist teaching of Lao Tzu and the teachings of Joel Goldsmith and the Infinite Way. And we'll see how all of these teachings really are about opening up the communication pathway of the right brain experience. And remember, it's the master and his emissary. You don't completely ignore the left brain. The left brain is the emissary. It's the instrument. It can be used very skillfully, right? It's very precise. It's surgical. It gets clear-cut definitions of what to do and how to do it. It's engineer, mechanical, that kind of a thing. And so it can be used very skillfully. It's the emissary, but it needs to be sent by the master. It's not the CEO, it's the manager. And so we want to open up this communication pathway and bring balance to both hemispheres if we can. And so we're going to begin in just a moment. First, we want to calm the waves of the mind. So take your first conscious breath, probably of the day. Hold it for a couple of seconds and maybe let it out through the mouth. Relax. And do that a few times. And as we attune our attention to the silence, we want to also cultivate a listening attitude, a receptive attitude. the Holy Spirit has been defined as the voice that speaks in the silence. The still small voice. And so we want to elicit this inner communion this morning, to drop down into the deep, silent nature of our being. To listen, to receive. We are willing to let go, at least for this next hour or so, all the things that we've learned with our left brain, all form, all definition, all fixed and rigid beliefs and judgments. We loosen our grip on these things. We open the hand of thought to become more receptive, to be open to the vast, to the luminous and the interconnected, to our true self. And so it is. I just want to read one chapter from the Tao Te Ching, Stephen Mitchell's translation. Stop thinking and end your problems. What difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? Must you value what others value? Avoid what others avoid? How ridiculous. Other people are excited as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless, like an infant before it can smile. Other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about, like someone without a home. I'm like an idiot. My mind is so empty. Other people are bright. I alone am dark. Other people are sharp. I alone am dull. Other people have a purpose. I alone don't know. I drift like a wave on the ocean. I blow as aimless as the wind. I am different from ordinary people. I drink from the Great Mother's breasts. So this is the fruition of the sage mind, right? The Chinese sage, the one who has reacclimated to the emptiness or vastness of things. Jesus says similar things to Nicodemus in the 3rd chapter of John's Gospel when he tells Nicodemus, you can't see the kingdom of God until you're born from above, anothen, or born again. In other words, you have to have this awakening of an inner vision. Spiritual senses need to become accessible or actualized, or you can't see what's already here, right? It's the switching over into this vast, untapped region of our own consciousness that we've been conditioned out of, right? We get excited like we're going to a parade. We're like little children caught up with the titillation of the senses. And we become so fixated on our sensations of pleasure and pain that we stay within these limited beliefs of body identification. The sage has transcended that. The sage has come to a place of knowing herself through this experience of stopping thinking. Because it's within the thought patterns that we habitually are preoccupied with that we have all of our meaning, definition, and identity. Right? What would you be if suddenly you had no access to your all familiar thoughts? These are the ways that we reinforce who we are through these patterns of belief and thought and memory. The sage has transcended this realm of limiting thought, right? He drinks from the great mother's breasts. That's another name for the dark enigma or Tao. In other words, the sage has become comfortable in this enlightened not knowing. And this not knowing is illuminated because he's being guided by the Tao. He drifts, he wanders, he alone doesn't know. Just like Nicodemus was told by Jesus in that story, when you awaken to knowing the kingdom of God, you will be living in a spiritual dimension, and the Spirit blows where it will. You don't know when it comes or where it goes. And the sage is literally a manifestation or a representation of that very Spirit. The sage has become like Hafiz, empty of himself, and the Christ breath blows through the sage. That is our true nature. To be a sage is to be yourself. Right? We can, again, stay within the left brain and abstract this idea of sage. I am not a sage. Sages are different from me. Well, that's your problem. That's the problem in a nutshell. You don't realize you're a sage. That is your inheritance. You were born to be a sage. You were created as a sage. Your very being is sage-like. You're one with all things already. But we have been conditioned out of it. We have taken on an identity and a way of being and thinking that literally insists we're not the sage, but you are. That's why these teachings are like soap, they say in Zen. The soap comes on the skin to wash off the grime of not knowing yourself. The teachings themselves are additives. They're not the natural state, but they are helping you exfoliate or get rid of the unnatural state. And then you can wash off the teaching and the grime and be who you are. You don't need to be taught who you are, but you need to unlearn who you're not. And that's what these teachings do. They're an unlearning teaching. They wash off the grime of not knowing yourself. They remove the blocks between your hemispheres so that you can come into the fullness of your being, right? And being like a little child carried along by the wind of Tao is total freedom, and you know all your needs are met. Right? This is something very important to get. So that's why he starts off this chapter. If you want to end your problems, stop thinking. So we want to play on this idea because it's through this unlearning process, like we're saying, that we come to the illumined state of what always already is the case. So that's Lao Tzu, right? And the circa 500 BC is when they say the Tao Te Ching was written. There, if you look at the scholarly stuff, if you're into it, there's some debates about, how it came together and how many hands were involved in the soup of the Tao Te Ching, but it's normally dated at 500 BCE, right? 500 years before Christ. Now we're still in China, but we're fast forwarding a few hundred years, and we're going from the Taoist tradition to the Chan or Zen tradition. It's called Chan in China. And in Chan, what we find is it's an amalgamation of Indian Buddhism and Taoism. That's what makes Chan unique. The Chinese mind couldn't totally accept everything that the Indian import of Buddhism came in with. And so being rooted within the Taoist, which is very shamanic, they integrated Buddhism and Taoism, and we have Chan. Now you're going to hear some similarities as a result of this. And remember, the whole thing is not to get caught up in the definitions and the particular concepts, but to cut through into the direct experience of the vast, your sage-like nature, right? The supreme way. This is another, you could translate it, and it's probably this in the original, the Tao, right? Tao is way. The supreme Tao is not difficult if only you do not pick and choose, neither love nor hate, and you will clearly understand. Be off by a hair, and you are as far apart as heaven from earth. If you want it to appear, be neither for nor against. For and against, opposing each other. This is the mind's disease. So we just got another infusion of what's going to take us to the next level in our conversation. So remember, we had said originally that we're in this identity pattern of having overlearned from the left brain. We identify with solid things. We identify with fragmented things. We can only see fragmented things. This is left brain perception. We're in this process now of melting those thoughts, melting that identity, opening up to the more fluid, expansive, wave-like vastness of the kingdom of God, our true nature, where we can relax, where we can let go, where we can trust nothing's wrong. We're being carried by the Great Mother. Right? This is, in this very moment, your other option. You can choose this. But we have to get out of the dilemma, and a dilemma it is. When we stay within the false perception of fragmentation, we now pick and choose among fragmented things. We are overly concerned with the definitions of right and wrong, and we label everything according to our judgments. And he says that's how we lose the supreme way. We disconnect from it, because we are overly preoccupied with our value judgments, our decisions, our sliding scales of desire and what we pick and choose and label right and wrong, good and evil. So what we have to recognize then is the great way opens when we stop thinking in these terms. These terms of right and wrong, good and bad, is what Joel Goldsmith would call the two powers. So Goldsmith uses this idea of the symbolical story of Adam and Eve taking the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He says as soon as we have that perspective of good and evil, we are outside the unity consciousness of the Garden of Eden. There is only one power, and that is the goodness of God that transcends our pairs of opposites of good and evil. The good and evil perception is completely false. It's a false, universal belief that all human consciousness is suffering from. And we're trying to find meaning and long-term happiness within this dualistic perception, which is really a desert. You can't find the truly good within the human scale of good. And you can't have good without evil when you're a human being trying to make your own way and make your own good. You're always going to get thwarted. It's always going to not go well. Something good is going to turn bad, or something evil is going to take away your good. That is the norm within human consciousness. The Buddha called it samsara. It's a constant up and down. You're never going to find the bliss, the peace of the sage when you're stuck within the pairs of opposites of good and evil. And you think there's really a choice there. You think you can choose just the good and avoid the evil, but they go together. They're the two horns of the dilemma, and they're both attached to the animal or bull of illusion. So there's no dilemma, really. You want to end your problems? Stop thinking. You can't think just good. You can't avoid evil within the human consciousness. You have to transcend it. You have to wake up to your sage-like nature. In oneness and equality, confusion vanishes of itself. Stop activity and return to stillness. And that stillness will be even more active. Only stagnating in duality, how can you recognize oneness? Now, this is a bit of an accusation against me. Excessive talking and thinking turn you from harmony with the Tao. Cut off talking and thinking, and there is nowhere you cannot penetrate. No need to seek the real. Just extinguish your views. Do not abide in dualistic views. Take care not to seek after them. As soon as there is right and wrong, the mind is scattered and lost. So as soon as we're off by a hair, he says, we lose connection to the great mystery, or the Tao, our sage-like intuitive wisdom that can see through illusion and know the real. As soon as we choose good versus evil, we're lost and we are in confusion. And once we're in confusion, we will try to double and triple down to do something as the human being to get us out of confusion. Once we're in pain, we still try to double and triple down to do something as the human being to get us out of pain. Two horns of the same dilemma, the bull of illusion. You will chase your tail. And in the Buddhist context, you can do this for eons. Don't think that when you drop the mortal coil, they say in the Buddhist tradition, that you're going to just wake up and be in heaven. You take your state of mind into a more subtle domain with a more subtle energetic body, and you're just as confused and lost and bewildered by appearances, which now become a little more subtle and arise out of your unconscious mind. You're doing the same work there as here. You just have a bit more insulation here, so you don't feel the sting so much. And so what we want to recognize is the only way out of the delusion, as we've been told, is we have to unlearn what we have overlearned. Right? We have to wake up to the interconnectedness of all being, the oneness beyond all dualities, and let that be our own nature. The only way to do that is be still. Quiet down. Let this ice block of a self melt. Loosen your grip on trying to search for things within the world and be carried by the Great Mother or the Tao or the Christ breath. Right? Remember what we had said. All of this will first smack in our Western hearing as counterintuitive, maybe even foolish, because we have overlearned. We have been conditioned to think in terms of particulars and separate things. Right? So we want to get quiet, we want to be still, and we want to open to the mystery within the very center of our heart. So, what makes these teachings so precious is that they will meet us where we think we are. And so, we do believe there are choices to make here. We definitely see that choice involves choosing the way that leads to pleasure or joy and avoiding the way that leads to pain or suffering. And so the spiritual teachings acknowledge that. But what they also do is steer us away from false pleasure and false joy and redirect our attention to where true pleasure and true joy can be found. Right? You cannot find the good within the realm of human good. You cannot find pleasure, true lasting pleasure, within the realm of human pleasure. And haven't we all tried this? Like this is the thing. What is insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting to get a different outcome. It just keeps ending up being the same disappointing scenario, even though we try to do another approach at it, another angle, another appearance, another form. So the choices are always going to be two. You stay in the desert or you get out of the desert. You stay asleep as the human being or you wake up as the sage. These are your options. There's no other option really available. You're either the ego or the spirit. You're in the kingdom of this world, which is samsara or suffering, or you're in the kingdom of the spirit or God, which is true freedom and bliss, enlightened mind. Okay? So Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, chapter 31, section 1. It's under the simplicity of salvation. He says the lessons to be learned are only two. Each has its outcome in a different world, and each world follows surely from its source. Okay? So what the worlds are, he's going to delineate, is that there is a world where everyone is set free, and you see, as the sage sees, that there is only enlightened life. Or everyone is bound and stuck and captured within the body identity and held within experiences of suffering. These are the two worlds that we can choose, right? The world of the sage, where everyone is set free, everyone is interconnected and interbeing, everyone is one life, which is divine, or we are a fragment. We are our own frozen identity, and everybody else is their own frozen identity. And so these two worlds, Jesus will refer to as the world of guilt and the world of innocence. And he says, there is no joy that you can seek for here and hope to find, but this is not the only outcome which your learning can produce. However much you may have overlearned being the lower self, the lesson that reflects the love of God is still stronger than that learning lesson. And you will learn that you and all living things are innocent. And when you see that, you will see another world. He says the outcome of the lesson that the one self is guiltless is a world in which there is no fear, and everything is lit with hope and sparkles with a gentle friendliness. Nothing but calls to you in soft appeal to be your friend and let it join with you. All right? And this is made available because I give up, we can give up our thinking about our judgments of what we know. So when I apply this to my own personal experience, I have to deal with, and I don't know if you're as critical as I am, but I can be very critical and judgmental of what I see out there and what people are. And I kind of have a good radar to pick up things that annoy me about people. Well, Lisa and I went to a play yesterday. We were gifted these tickets to the Kravitz Center. And you don't know about this. I was doing it in my own head. But I was letting go of all of the critical thoughts that were coming up every time I saw something or someone that wasn't right. Um, I failed a few times, believe me. And those were the times I shared with Lisa. I had my moments. I was on the balance beam, and then I was off. But that's all right. We get another chance every moment. But what I noticed, and the whole point of bringing this up is, it felt so good to give up my judgments of people in those brief instants. And like when I went to go buy our chips at the concession stand, and like I looked at this person, and it was just like this. Again, this might sound a little sentimental and hyperbolic, but it was like this God moment. She smiled with such a beautiful smile at me, this older woman, and I smiled right back. And it was like this joining in this moment. Everything fell away. Like she accepted me, I accepted her. There was just clarity of mutual love and acceptance in this exchange of buying pretzels and chips. And this is what we're being taught. Like in this experience of consciousness, we can see a world where everyone is innocent. And I can come to this counter buying my chips and pretzels, and I can look for the innocence in you. And that connection fed me. I mean, I'm still fed by it. There was an exchange that was precious. Or I can come to the counter, or the lady sitting next to me in the theater, and she came in, and this was the thing too. It's like Jesus says you're never reacting to the person and what they're doing to you. You're actually reacting to what you expect to see and want to see in them. So this woman comes in, and she kind of fits this cardboard cutout character of somebody that I'm just ready to judge. Like, you have your, you kind of have your archetypes that really trigger you. Well, she kind of fit that form. So it was perfect. I just immediately don't like her. The way she sounded, the way she looked, like it was just, you know what I'm talking about? Like you just get this feeling that you don't like a person, right? And so instead of saying, hello, she's sitting down in the seat, oh, everybody's different here. And I was like, now I'm confirmed in not liking her. So I kind of quipped back, you're different too. And I just had it out for this woman in my mind the whole time. And so I went from a world of connection and innocence and joy and feeding my heart to actually being grovelly and upset about stuff. And then it's contagious. And then you look out and you start judging everything about the play. Play is not right. That was a miscast. That person shouldn't be in that role. And it just cascades. And you get this whole world. And if you don't set your mind in the morning, like really clear, because I was just talking to Patty about this before service, the world is like on overdrive to trigger you now. That's what it seems to me anyway. I don't know what your experience is, but it just seems like everything is kind of like starting to boil in terms of triggering and upsetting and confusing and anxiety-prone conditions. And if you don't set your mind in the morning and get clear and melt down and become fluid and open and still to your sage-like intuitive awareness, things will just, take you. You won't be carried along by the Great Mother. You'll be carried along by chaos and upset and disturbances one after another. And so this is the point that Jesus is making. If you see a guilty world, it will just keep reinforcing itself. If you're ready to see a world of innocence, he says, everything begins to sparkle with hope and gentle friendliness. Nothing but calls to you in soft appeal to be your friend and let it join with you. And never does its call remain unheard or misunderstood or left unanswered. The soft, eternal calling of each part of God's creation to the whole is heard throughout the world that this awakened awareness brings. There is no living thing that does not share the universal will that it be whole and that you do not leave its call unheard. So when we drop down into the quiet mind, we're in this different frequency where we see the world from a very different perception and we join with it because we realize it's interbeing. There's only one being there. And then we answer that call with a kindness. If we don't answer that call with a kindness, we leave it separate from our mind. And as he had said, if we're off by a hair, then heaven separates from earth, and it just feels like this enlightened perspective becomes so far away. Like we can't get back to it for some reason. Right? Now, mind you, and this is why, again, A Course in Miracles is so valuable, because it says that there is a different way of thinking that we've been describing in this service that wants us to see things as fragmented and separated. And so what the Course is very good at is recognizing that in the way that we have learned this way of thinking from early on, we have this setup where we actually have people in our life to make sure we stay separate. We have a penchant or a desire to react to things to make us actually judge and condemn people and situations. We actually are choosing that. That's why he says there are only two choices here. And you can choose to stay asleep or you could choose to wake up. But for many of us, we're on a default setting of choosing to stay asleep. And the beauty of the way that we set it up is, I'm not doing it, they're doing it. I'm not choosing it, they're making me react this way. And so the reactive behavior looks as if it's just the natural response to the way people are and the way that they're treating us. Well, then we have to come up with some kind of defense or an attack back. And what we're learning here, and what I was just kind of laughing at myself about, is we already have this pre-programmed default. Like we have our cast of characters, like that woman that sat next to me in the theater. Like I immediately don't like her. You have family members like that. You have friends like that. You have, public figures like that. You just immediately don't like them. And there's no room or possibility for you not to be the reactive personality with this person. You immediately are blaming or judging them. And these are overlearned habit patterns. We don't look at them as choices. We look at them as life. This is the way the world is. This is the way they are. This is the way I have to be with them, or they'll eat me alive, or they'll take advantage of me. And all of these ways of dealing with these judgments becomes a locked-in, frozen world. And he's saying we can't get out of it until we learn we're choosing it. So, having said all that, I'd like to have you maybe settle into a meditative posture, get ready to actually go into that more alpha state of brain activity by closing your eyes, finding your breath. And so as you switch from this frenetic wave of beta into a slower alpha wave, as you close your eyes and find your breath, you begin to sink down into a more deep and intuitive space. And this is what Jesus says when he invites us to let go of our ancient learning that has caused us so much upset and despair. He says, "Let us be still an instant and forget all things we ever learned, all thoughts we had, and every preconception that we hold of what things mean and what their purpose is. Let us remember not our own ideas of what the world is for. We do not know. Let every image held of anyone be loosened from our minds and swept away. Be innocent of judgment, unaware of any thoughts of evil or of good that ever crossed your mind of anyone. Now do you know him not, but you are free to learn of him and learn of him anew. Now is he born again to you, and you are born again to him, without the past that sentenced him to die, and you with him. Now is he free to live, as you are free, because an ancient learning passed away and left a place in this instant for truth to be reborn in you. Be very still an instant. Come without all thought of what you ever learned before, and put aside all images you made. Nothing will hurt you in this holy place to which you come to listen silently, to learn the truth of what you really want. No more than this will you be asked to learn, but as you hear it, you will understand you need but come away without the thoughts you did not want and that were never true. Be still and listen. Think not ancient thoughts. Forget the dismal lessons that you learned. Christ calls to all with equal tenderness. And he just wants us to understand this universal principle that as we learn from the silence, we learn that we are giving the world what we think it's giving us. It is our fear that we see coming at us in the world. It is our anger. It is our hatred. It is our upset. So in the silence, we give up these ancient thoughts, and the world becomes washed and born again. The answer that I give my brother is what I am asking for. And what I learn of him is what I learn about myself. And as you stay attuned to this silence deep within you, this is where we meet our brothers. This is how we join with all living things. From this silent mind, so we allow all other thoughts to be still. We give up our judgments of what we thought others were, and we just come to them with this open, silent, wise, discerning, sage-like mind. This is what we want to see in them, because this is what we want to see in ourselves. That's why finally he says, forgive your brothers of all appearances, which are but ancient lessons that you taught yourself about the sinfulness in you. And in this choice, Christ has been reborn to both of you. Blue bag is going to go around. We bless the offering, and we just charge it with the intention that all things represent the good, the true, and the beautiful, in whatever form this offering may take. And so it is. Amen. All right. You can rise, seal the deal. Just for another instant, connect to that place within the heart where all thoughts are still and the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. All right, everyone. Have a great day. See many of you tomorrow night.